All right, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're tackling something I think we've all encountered at some point.
Yeah.
And that is dealing with those
Oh, yeah.
difficult people, the folks that make you wonder how they ever got through basic human interaction 101.
Right.
You know what I mean? So to help us navigate this,
Right.
we're turning to a source
Okay.
called the Asshole Survival Guide.
Oh, that.
And we're going to learn how to not just survive,
Yes.
but thrive
Yes.
in a world where, let's face it, these folks exist.
They do. They're out there. And
They do.
it's fascinating how universal this struggle is. You know, the author even mentions in the book that he gets asked about this all the time.
Oh, wow.
Constantly.
Like everywhere he goes?
Yeah, from librarians.
Interesting.
He even says dealing with Russian assholes
Hold on.
to Stanford police sergeants.
Russian assholes. We're going to need that story
Yeah, we'll get to that.
later. But seriously, it's wild how often this comes up. Is it really that big of a deal, though?
Oh, absolutely. I think we think of it as like, just an annoyance or whatever, but it really does have a significant impact.
Yeah.
Workplace jerks alone cost U.S. corporations billions annually.
Billions with a B.
Yes, billions with the B. These challenging personalities, as the author calls them, they have a real impact on.
Okay, you've got my attention. So before we get to the surviving part, are we talking about like every person who's ever been rude, or are there levels to this jerkness?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Because I think we all have those moments.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, there are definitely distinctions the author talks about.
Okay.
Temporary assholes versus certified assholes.
I like those terms.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And temporary assholes are those folks who might have a bad day or make an occasional mistake,
Okay.
but they're not consistently nasty.
Yeah.
Think of like a basketball coach who might yell during a game,
Oh, right.
but is generally supportive and fun and, encouraging.
So, a little tough love.
Yeah. Interestingly, research shows those occasional outbursts from usually pleasant people can actually boost performance.
Really?
Yeah.
So if it comes from someone who's not always a jerk,
Right.
it can be motivating.
Yeah.
That's really surprising.
Yeah.
Why?
But then you've got the certified assholes.
Okay.
And these are the ones where it's like,
It's a pattern.
it's a pattern.
Yeah.
Their negative behavior is a constant.
Okay.
And so their impact is entirely different.
Okay.
Eroding morale and definitely not boosting anybody's performance.
Gotcha. So let's say you're dealing with one of these certified types.
Uh-huh.
Does this book just say, like, hit the eject button?
Is
Get
it?
out of there.
Yeah.
Quit your job, run.
It's interesting you say that because he actually does present quitting as a completely valid strategy
Really?
in certain situations.
Huh.
He uses this example of Misty Shelsky,
Okay.
a convenience store cashier
Okay.
who quit after her employer created what they call the firing contest.
A firing contest.
Yeah, so employees had to guess who would be fired next.
Oh, my God.
And get this, she was awarded unemployment benefits because the judge ruled that it was a hostile work environment.
Wow. So you can actually quit and be like, hey, this place is toxic.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It does make you wonder, though, why do people stay in those situations longer than they should?
The author calls it asshole blindness.
Asshole blindness.
Yeah. It's just like this inability to see how bad things truly are.
Is it like you get used to it, or is there more to it?
I think it's complex.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it's denial, sometimes it's misplaced hope that things will get better.
Okay.
But there's also this thing he talks about called escalation dynamics.
Oh.
And that is this idea that the more you invest in a situation,
Right.
the harder it is to walk away, even if it's a bad bet.
You get kind of stuck.
Yeah, you just keep thinking like, oh, I'm almost there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to get better.
Right. So quitting isn't always the answer, but you also can't stay forever.
Right.
Are there ways to avoid these folks in the first place? Like, are there red flags?
He has a whole section on asshole detection tips.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah, so like, for example, pay close attention during job interviews.
Okay.
Are they treating you with respect?
Yeah.
Do they seem genuinely interested in what you have to say, or are they dismissive?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a huge red flag.
It's like if they'll do it with you, they'll do it to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And look at how those in power treat people with less power.
That's a good point.
Is it a culture of respect, or is it more like every man for himself?
Yeah.
That's a key indicator of what kind of environment you're stepping into.
This is making me a little paranoid about my own workplace.
Yeah.
But I mean, seriously, good tips. What if you can't totally avoid them?
Right.
Like, what if it's a coworker or someone you have to see sometimes.
Right.
Any strategies for that?
Well, he calls them ducking strategies. And
Bucking.
Yeah, ducking, like, like a duck, get out of the way.
Right.
And it's all about limiting exposure.
Okay.
So one example he uses is French bus drivers.
Interesting.
And so certain routes are known for having, like, a lot of rude passengers.
Oh, no.
And so drivers who felt overwhelmed by that, they could request to switch routes, or they could even drive a tram where they have, like, a separate cab and less direct contact.
So little changes to your environment can actually make a difference.
Yeah.
Interesting. What about, didn't he have a story about a coworker he had to kind of duck?
He did. He had this colleague who was very narcissistic, always bragging. So to limit his exposure, he would avoid one-on-one conversations.
Okay.
He would leave meetings early if the person started, like, dominating.
Interesting. So sometimes you just got to get out of there.
Yeah.
What else? What other ducking strategies?
One that stood out to me was the slow down technique. So it's about intentionally delaying your responses to the difficult person.
So you're not letting them, like, control the pace of the conversation.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's not about being passive-aggressive. It's about regaining control of the interaction.
You're not letting them manipulate your emotions as easily.
Exactly. You're breaking their pattern. And sometimes when they don't get that immediate reaction they crave, it can actually discourage their bad behavior.
Okay.
And he also recommends creating what he calls asshole-free zones.
I love that.
Basically, physical or mental spaces where you can escape the negativity and just kind of recharge.
Everyone needs a little sanctuary sometimes,
Yeah.
especially when you're surrounded by those folks. But beyond avoiding them or limiting contact, are there any, like, mind tricks or anything that we can use to protect ourselves?
That's a great question. And that leads us to the next section of the book, where he really explores how you can shift your perspective to lessen the impact.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
So one of the most powerful strategies he discusses is reframing.
Reframing.
Yeah, consciously changing how you think about a situation
Okay.
to reduce its negative impact. It's about recognizing that you have more control over your thoughts and feelings than you might realize.
So you're not just ignoring the problem, you're actively changing how you think about it.
Exactly.
But how do you do that when someone is being, like, truly awful?
That's where specific reframing techniques come in.
Okay.
So, for example, there's the "it's not my fault" reappraisal.
Okay.
It's about reminding yourself that their behavior is most likely rooted in their issues,
Right.
not anything you've done.
Right.
It helps you to kind of separate yourself from their negativity.
Okay. I could see that. It's easy to kind of get sucked into their drama and be like, oh, what did I do?
Yeah,
You know?
totally.
But ultimately, their behavior is on them, not you.
Yes.
Okay. What else? What other reframing techniques?
Another one is downplay the threat. You acknowledge their behavior, but you choose to see them as less powerful or less harmful than you once did.
So you're kind of taking away their power.
Yeah.
At least in your mind.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So he uses this example of a West Point cadet named Becky,
Okay.
and she dealt with a lot of hazing.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But she kind of found the humor in the insults and the punishments that the upperclassmen would inflict.
Wow.
And it made them seem less intimidating.
So she reframed it in a way that was like, okay, this isn't actually scary to me.
Yeah.
Interesting. Any other examples that really stood out to you?
One that's particularly relevant, I think, for today's world is focus on the bigger picture.
Okay.
This is about stepping back and putting the difficult person's behavior into perspective.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're dealing with something you don't know about.
Right.
It's about recognizing that their jerk-like behavior is just a small part of their overall story.
It's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in, like, the immediate frustration.
Totally.
But a little perspective can make a difference. What about when things are really bad, though?
Yeah.
Like when even reframing doesn't seem to be enough.
Yeah.
Does the book address those situations?
It does. And this is where the concept of emotional detachment comes in.
Emotional detachment.
Yeah. So it's like a more intense strategy for protecting yourself when things are really bad.
Okay.
He actually suggests 3 levels of detachment,
Okay.
ranging from simply disconnecting from work after hours to like near total detachment in truly toxic environments.
So he's saying it's okay to emotionally check out sometimes.
Yeah, in those truly awful situations, sometimes it's the only way to preserve your own well-being.
That seems kind of counterintuitive.
It does. But think of it as a temporary measure, a way to regain your strength and your composure.
So it's like hitting pause so you can come back and deal with it
You guess
when,
that,
when
huh?
you're ready. Okay, I can see the logic in that, but it also makes me wonder,
Yeah.
when is it time to stop trying to cope and start fighting back?
Oh, that's a great segue,
Yeah.
because the next part of the book is all about that,
Let's do it.
fighting back.
All right.
And some of these strategies are pretty surprising.
Okay, now you've really got me hooked. Let's dive in.
So we talked about avoiding and coping, but sometimes you really got to take a stand,
Okay.
and that's where the author really gets into this whole section on fighting back.
Okay. I was kind of hoping for throwing metaphorical punches.
Yeah. Well, it's not always about aggressive confrontation.
Okay.
It all starts with a crucial step, which is documentation.
Oh, really?
Gather evidence.
Okay.
So save emails, keep notes of interactions, dates, times, witnesses, that sort of thing.
Seems a bit bureaucratic, doesn't it?
Think of it as protection.
Okay.
It prevents those he said, she said situations
Yes,
where
I knew
it's
it.
your word against theirs. And remember,
Yeah.
these challenging personalities, they can be incredibly convincing.
Oh, yeah. They're good at twisting things.
And so having
Yeah.
that hard evidence
Right.
to back you up,
Okay.
it can make a huge difference.
So documentation is key. I got it.
Yeah, like the book uses the Gretchen Carlson lawsuit against Roger Ailes at Fox News as an example.
Oh, yeah. That was a big one.
Yeah, and she secretly recorded conversations with him. And those recordings became key evidence in her case.
So it can be a real game changer.
Yeah, it's not just about protecting yourself. It's about holding those in power accountable for their actions.
Right. Okay, documentation. But it can feel lonely, going up against someone, especially if they've got all the power.
Yeah, and that's where the power of allies comes in.
Oh, okay.
Having a support system, like people who can corroborate your experiences,
Okay.
who can back you up, it makes a huge difference.
Strength in numbers?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's not about ganging up on someone. It's about having validation
Right.
and support. And research even shows that bullied employees
Okay.
who banded together were far more successful at getting the bullying to stop.
Interesting. So we've got documentation.
Yeah.
We've got allies.
Yeah.
What are some of the tactics?
What do you do? For fighting back,
Yeah.
the book explores a range,
Okay.
from calm, rational conversations to more assertive approaches.
Okay.
One that might surprise you is what he calls calm, rational, and candid confrontation.
So you're saying sometimes the best way to deal with a jerk is to actually talk to them?
You'd be surprised.
I would, because these people aren't exactly receptive to feedback.
Right. But sometimes people who act like jerks aren't even aware
Oh, really?
of how their behavior is affecting others.
They have no clue.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So a calm, direct conversation
Okay.
done privately and respectfully can be incredibly effective.
So it's not about attacking them. It's about explaining, hey, this is what you're doing,
Right.
and this is how it makes me feel.
Exactly. It's about asking for a change.
Okay, so it's like holding up a mirror to them, but in a way that's non-confrontational. What about the ones who are truly malicious, though?
Right.
Or the ones who just won't listen?
Right. And so for those cases, he suggests considering more assertive tactics, but always with caution.
Right.
It's about choosing your battles wisely,
Right.
understanding the potential consequences.
Sure.
One example he gives is humor.
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 Okay.
Like using humor as a weapon.
I like this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Think of it as like disarming them with wit.
right.
If someone is constantly using sarcasm
Yeah.
or put downs,
Right.
a well-timed, clever comeback can sometimes shift the dynamic,
Okay.
especially if it gets others laughing with you.
Oh, so you're turning it back on them.
Exactly.
But in a way that's kind of entertaining.
Yes.
Okay.
You're taking back control without escalating the situation.
Right.
He tells this great anecdote about a Silicon Valley CEO
Okay.
who was notorious for using what he called vegetable humor
Vegetable humor.
to insult his executives.
Okay.
So his team got so fed up with this that they actually replaced themselves with heads of lettuce in a meeting.
They brought lettuce to a meeting?
They brought lettuce to a meeting.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Did it work?
Apparently it did.
That's amazing.
The CEO got the message loud and clear.
Good for them.
And you know what? It actually brought the team closer together.
Okay, I love that story. So humor
Yeah,
can be a powerful tool.
it can be.
I'm guessing it's not always appropriate, though.
Right. There are definitely times when humor might not be enough.
Right.
And so the book discusses strategies like confronting the person publicly
Okay.
or even enlisting the help of others to intervene.
So like calling them out in front of everyone?
It can be risky,
Yeah.
and it's not a strategy you use lightly.
Right.
But the key is to really assess the situation,
Okay.
the potential consequences, and your own level of comfort.
Okay, so we've covered avoiding coping and even fighting back.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do on a larger scale to kind of make the world less assholey?
I'm so glad you asked that, because the final section of the book truly shifts the focus to exactly that. Individual responsibility and being part of the solution.
So it's not just about surviving these encounters, it's about actively trying to like change the culture.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in creating a more civil and respectful society.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He starts by highlighting the importance of promoting civility initiatives,
Okay.
both in the workplace and in our communities.
Okay, what are some examples of those?
One that stood out to me is the Oxner 105 Way.
Okay.
This is a health system in Louisiana,
Okay.
and they train their employees
Yeah.
to make eye contact,
Okay.
smile,
Right.
and greet anyone
That's nice.
who came within 10 feet.
Yeah.
And it's a simple concept, but it had a huge impact on their workplace culture.
Little things like that can really make a difference.
Yeah, and he talks about these little things called nudges.
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 Yeah. Okay.
And they're basically like these subtle environmental cues
Okay.
that encourage good behavior.
So it's not about forcing people to change. It's about kind of creating an environment where being kind and respectful is just easier.
Exactly.
Oh, I like that.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, so one example from the book is a company that created a wall of fame
Oh,
to highlight employees
cool.
who went above and beyond to help others.
That's awesome. It's like positive reinforcement on a grand scale.
Exactly.
But how does this all tie back to individual responsibility?
Well, he emphasizes that while these larger initiatives are important, change ultimately starts with each of us.
Right.
It's about self-awareness.
Okay.
Recognizing our own tendencies and actively working to avoid becoming the challenging personality.
Oh, so you're saying sometimes we might be the asshole and not even realize it.
It's a tough truth to swallow.
Yeah.
But it's essential, and he even shares a personal story.
Oh, really?
About being called out by his department chair
Okay.
for writing a really cruel email to a student.
And he realized that even well-intentioned people can slip up and act like jerks sometimes.
It takes guts to admit that in a book about assholes.
It does, but it really underscores his point that self-awareness is crucial.
Yeah.
We all need to be willing to examine our own behavior
Right.
and be open to feedback, even when it's uncomfortable.
That's a good point. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From avoiding jerks to fighting back to being part of the solution.
Yeah.
What's the biggest takeaway you've gotten from the Asshole Survival Guide?
For me, it's the realization that we have more agency than we think. It's not just about reacting to these difficult people. It's about actively shaping our interactions
Okay.
and contributing to a more positive culture.
It's a powerful message. It makes me wonder, though, how easy is it to become an asshole without even realizing it?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah, because nobody wants to be that person.
Right. And the book actually delves into the factors that can increase someone's asshole potential. And it's not just about personality. There are actually some surprising situational influences
Okay.
that can bring out the worst in us.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What are these asshole risk factors?
Well, one of the biggest ones is simply being around assholes. Remember that study we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah.
Where just one encounter with a rude person made others more likely to be rude themselves.
Yeah, it was like negativity was contagious.
Exactly. The more exposure you have to jerks,
Right.
the greater the risk of picking up their bad habits.
Okay, so step one, minimize your exposure to jerks.
Yeah, good advice.
All right, got it. What else? What else can turn a perfectly nice person into?
Well, not so nice.
Yeah.
Power.
Power.
Power's a big one.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's this researcher, Dr. Keltner at UC Berkeley.
Okay.
He's done some fascinating work on this.
Yeah.
And he's found that even short bursts of power can make people more self-centered, less empathetic, more impulsive.
Power corrupts.
Exactly. And absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
Right.
The book even uses this example of a study that observed drivers at a four-way stop.
Okay.
And drivers of expensive cars were way more likely to cut off other drivers and ignore pedestrians
Oh, wow, really?
compared to those driving less expensive cars.
So if you think you're above the rules,
Yeah.
you're more likely to break them.
Yeah.
Interesting. So stay humble no matter how much power you gain.
Yeah. Good advice.
What else?
The third major risk factor is overload.
Overload. Okay.
When you're constantly rushed, stressed, juggling a million things,
Yeah.
it's easy to become irritable, impatient,
Yeah.
even disrespectful.
I can relate.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the book highlights how technology can actually exacerbate this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the constant distractions of emails, text messages, social media.
Right.
It creates this feeling of always being on.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. No wonder everybody's so stressed out.
It takes a toll.
Yeah.
The author even shares a story about how the leadership team at Twitter had to implement a no phones in meetings policy.
Really? Even at Twitter?
Even at Twitter, because they were so distracted by their devices.
Oh, that's telling. So
Yeah.
create boundaries, unplug, when you can
Yes.
make space for,
Yes.
those mindful interactions.
Absolutely.
We've gone deep on the asshole survival guide.
We have.
Everything from avoiding jerks to understanding what might turn US into one.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
It has. What's the final takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
You know, for me, this book isn't just about survival. It's a call to action.
A call to action to do what?
To be more aware, more intentional, more respectful.
Okay.
You know, to recognize that we all have the power to create a more civil, compassionate,
Yeah.
and, dare I say, less assholey world.
I love that. It's a
Yeah.
good reminder that even though we can't control how others behave, we can control
Yeah.
how we respond.
Absolutely.
And we can choose to be part of the solution,
Yes.
not the problem.
Well said.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah.
Thanks for breaking it all down for us.
My pleasure.
To our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some practical tools
Yeah.
and maybe even a new perspective
Mhm.
on dealing with those difficult people we all encounter.
Right.
Remember, you have more control than you might realize.
Yes.
A little awareness and intention can go a long way.
Absolutely.
Until next time, stay curious and don't be an asshole.